Yo, what's cracking, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Prison Break Raw. I'm your host, the one and only Big JD. Go ahead, give this channel a subscribe, share at least some messages or comments, hit that thumbs up for the like, notification bell to be informed on all episodes when they drop. Most importantly, be sure to share. Share it around to your family, your friends, your coworkers, anywhere and everywhere you can share it. All up on your social media platforms. Let's get this raw and uncut material out there to the millions that don't know we're here. Get the subscriber count up. Get locked into that YouTube algorithm so that we become more widely suggested. Prison America Divide and Conquer Part 2, the meat and potatoes of this whole discussion that began last week. We are going to dive deeper into the rabbit hole with this one. But before we get into it, let me throw out that disclaimer. If you don't remember anything else in this video, please remember this disclaimer. I do not endorse, condone, justify, promote, believe, suggest, or seek to push any of this bullshit from the past, what's currently going on in the present, or what could be possibly taking place in the future. I am simply an independent, free-thinking, objective, outside personality peering through an independent lens, sitting on top of his mountain with a bowl of popcorn, laughing his balls off at the buffoonery of divide and conquer in the valley below, with all its racisms and tribalisms and socialisms and conservatisms and progressivisms and thisisms and thatisms and everywhere an ism. I am completely detached from all of that. As a non-biased person, I believe in presenting to you these facts according to historical research, historical facts, data that's grounded in federal law and elsewhere, and it is for educational purposes and educational purposes only. So please, before you become emotionally triggered and have to run to your safe space, remember this disclaimer. This video right here is probably the most difficult one I've had to do thus far. It deals with a lot of hotly debated topics of division and conquering, and discrimination, a lot of deep-seated emotions, feelings, thoughts, and resentments surrounding this issue. I'm going to go ahead and take a crack at it. You already know my get down. If you've been rocking with me since the beginning, you already know that I put out some doozies. I've taken you through the journey of the dark forest, to the four corners of my mind, and I've even martyred myself. So I feel that this topic right here is worthy of discussion, and based upon everything that I know and everything that I've learned, outside of the skewed political leaning bias of some kind of a professor in some college somewhere, I'm giving it to you as just historical record. Outside looking in, like I said. So let's go ahead and get into this one. But knowing that it's going to sting for some and enlighten others, still I feel that it is fitting to set the tone with some soothing music to guide us down this dark rabbit hole. Go ahead and hit it. Yeah, there it is right there. To be or not to be a white person or a black person and labeled as such in America or with the advent of social media in the world is the question. And I don't mean to sound like William Shakespeare, but yes, it's true. To be somebody who is labeled white or black is the subject of today's topic. We're going to get into the origin of these words. Why were they used as labels? How they became identities? And where they could be possibly going into the future, and how at least one of these labels is constantly evolving and changing and taking shape into something much, much different than how it really currently was in the first place. But not too much different in some ways, but very different in others. Let's go ahead and get into this, starting with white people, the white race. Where did it come from? Where did it start? Why is it here? And who invented this term, this label, this identity? And what is the white race? Well, first off, white is not a race. It has never been a race. It was never intended to be a race. It was simply a class designation for a group of people that were being used as gophers, do-boys, and fuckboys, for lack of a better term. And it started in the 1600s. There's a lot of speculation as to where it started. Some say Virginia, some say it was first coined in a screenplay and kind of took fire as a joke. Others say something much different. One theory that I have that is a strong possibility and makes more sense than the rest is its connection to ancient Rome. And we'll get into that for a second, but let's take a look at how it took shape as far as its application. So during the 1600s, there was a mass influx of migration coming from Europe. All these European peasants looking to embark upon a journey into the big, new, bright, and prosperous world of the Americas. Well, it was new to them, but there were still people living here that it wasn't so new for. And these peasants were seeking to flee the feudal system that they were living under, the original celebrity elite power structure of kings and queens, prince and princesses, dukes and duchesses, earls and all, the ones that were fucking their wives before they had a chance to consummate their marriage, the ones that were eating their first crops, the ones that were sacrificing their children to fight in some foreign feudal war or crusade abroad. These peasants were looking to get on anything that can float or sail across the Atlantic, but they quickly learned that no matter how far away they sailed, they couldn't get out of the grasp of the dick beaters to these royal pain in the asses, no pun intended. Because no sooner did they wash up on the sandy shores of the east coast of this continent, were the landowners already setting up shop and staking a claim to the territory around them. These royals had established this landowner as a direct conduit to them, a pawn, if you will, a puppet. And they had deep pockets, deep pockets, and a large financial reach, more so than these peasants. Because no sooner did the first peasant stick the first shovel in the ground, these people were already setting up shop. They were already here. You had 3 royal superpowers during the time. They were all 3 of them were feudal systems, and at least 2 out of the 3 were controlled by the potpourri of the Vatican. I don't mean that bowl of good smelling stuff that's in your bathroom, but the Pope, the white man in the tall hat. That guy right there was pulling the strings of France and Spain, but England had severed the ties to potpourri, and they, with the King Henry VIII, had established the Church of England. So they were hardcore, fanatical, diehard Protestants. So England, France, and Spain were the 3 superpowers of the day. And they were sweeping up as much land as they could and instilling their landowners, and a problem occurred in all of this. Most of these peasants knew that they were far out of reach of the king or the queen. The king or the queen were not going to flee from their comfortable chateaus and castles and places like that where they were safe and snug behind an armed guard and a professional army that they could dispatch at any given time and just wipe out any insurrection. These peasants knew that, and they can get pretty big for their britches and try to revolt against the landowner, kill him, kill all his slaves, kill his few guards that he may have, and then seize control of the land. The revolutionary mindset was here as long as the first touchdown at Plymouth Rock. It's just been the way it is. It's started as an idea of getting away from this feudal system, this royal aristocracy, and there had to be a way to quash it and to subdue it by any means necessary. Limited supply of manpower as far as military is concerned, so these landowners had to devise a plan, a conspiracy with other landowners to create a class of people that were just below them but just above the peasants. A class of people to deputize and give them some stinking badges and dispatch them out into the territory to enforce the rules, law, and order and interests of the landowner so that he can get his profits and kick it upstairs in homage to the aristocrats and the royals that were financing the operation. So they created this class of people and they called them white people. Now, like I said, the speculation to the origin of the word itself. But my theory in it, and is more plausible and it makes a lot more sense if you think about it, stems from a much earlier tradition that was rooted and founded in the Roman Empire. Now know that the Roman Empire occupied all of Europe and parts of North Africa and the Middle East. So when it dissolved and fell apart, all these offshoot kingdoms that sprouted up in England and Spain and France and places like that were just an extension of the Roman Empire because they were descendants from Rome. A lot of the practices, customs, and architectural design was adopted from the Romans, and a lot of the ideas of a republic, of senators and all that stuff, of parliaments, and everything that they designed, law, legal system and stuff, they had learned from the Romans and the Greeks. One symbol of Roman identity that was a practice with them was the Roman citizen himself. Many people lived in the empire. Not many people were citizens. The Roman citizen was a higher class individual than the rest. He had privileges and status above the rest, and the symbol that signified that he was a citizen was the white toga. And in some foreign lands, some people called him the whites, or the white man, or the man in white. And that was what signified them as a Roman citizen, and they could pretty much go and do whatever they pleased. They had privilege and status above others. So why not basically rebrand that old custom and create these white people as a citizen of whatever territory they were in under the control of the landowner? And also another one is what a lot of people don't know is even though these were mostly diehard Christians, whether Catholic or Protestant, a lot of the ones that were in the higher societies practiced a lot of occult and followed a lot of occult symbolism. You could see it in Washington, D.C. with the Washington Monument, the obelisk. It's supposed to be the penis of Baal, and some people say in certain esoteric circles. And what was the color of Baal? The god Baal was white. Everything in Washington, D.C. is white, from the White House to the Washington Monument to even a lot of the sidewalks and things, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and even the High Court, all white. Symbols of this purity and citizenry status above the peasants. Now, these white people originally came in all sizes and shapes and colors. Didn't matter what their ethnic background was. The only thing that mattered was, were they willing to do whatever it was necessary to enforce the rule and law of the landowner? And yes, they were, because if it meant that they were moved about a peasantry to do this, then they would do it. You could literally take one of these white people, blonde-haired and blue eyes, staring in the face of another blonde-haired and blue-eyed person who was a peasant, and they would not see him as an equal. They're a white person, they're a peasant. They are inferior to them. And this superiority complex started to develop with the more power they got. Now, fast forwarded about 100 and so years later, England was pretty much sewing up all loose ends, kicking out all foreign influence and extinguishing any control that France or Spain might have had on these colonies. So, in order to sew up the power and lock it down and monopolize it, they were going to bring in their own people of ethnic similarity and origin. The Anglo-Saxon was being shipped in to take over a lot of these lands that originally belonged to French or Spaniards or even freedmen Africans who were indentured servants who were compensated for their time and set up plantations themselves and had their own slaves. More about later. And they took it all from them. And these white people that were the gophers in the middle were starting to be phased out of everything that wasn't Anglo-Saxon Protestant as well. So they were Anglo-Saxon by race and they were Protestant by religion. And the more of them that started to come over, the more power they started to lock down. And a lot of these whites started to promote themselves into landowner positions, and the white and the landowner started to kind of like gel together to form a single identity of superiority, grounded and rooted in white Anglo-Saxon Protestantism, commonly referred to as WASPs. But the phrase WASP wasn't exactly brought forth until the 1900s, but it was there at the time. In the Revolutionary War times, a lot of things were starting to change. There was no more indentured servitude. There was now chattel slavery. But let's stay on track with these white people and how it evolved. All right, so during the Revolutionary War, most of these white Anglo-Saxon Protestants took over everything. And as they started to basically become more inbred and more, the gene pool was at risk of becoming more watered down, they had to start bringing more into the fold, more up under the umbrella. So they started enlisting outside people that were also migrating there of like mind and like religious beliefs. Now, religious beliefs meant of like good moral character. Now, it's very important. Remember, I say that good moral character because that what that means is that you are on par with the tribalistic mindset of fanatical Protestantism, whether it be Martin Luther variety, John Calvin variety, whatever, Methodist, Church of England. You were on par with that. You were going to be welcomed into the fold. So they started to count Dutch and Teutonic Germans, or what would be later come Anglo-Teutonics, into the fold. And as the umbrella started to expand, the gene pool started to expand, but the white Anglo-Saxon hierarchy at the top was still considered to be the superior white people, while all others were basically just lesser second class or lower class or middle class white people. At this time, Irish, Italians, Jews, French, Spaniards, Portuguese, even Slavs, people like that, were not considered to be white. Not yet. This would come later on. And it would also evolve even further. But let's stop right there for 1 second and let's get into the origin of black so that this kind of all ties together and makes sense. Because I don't want to keep you on here for a whole hour, but I do want to make this point clear. So, who are the black people? Where did this title come from? Where did this name, this label, this identity? Where did it come from and where is it rooted in? How did it start? Well, before there was even white people in this country, there was already black people here. There's even some documentation where people were writing in journals saying, when we first got here, there were no white people here because the title, the class, wasn't invented yet. But the black indentured servant was around much longer than the white person. And in the beginning, an indentured servant wasn't only just African. There were many Irish and Scottish people that were toiling in that hot sun alongside their African brothers and sisters in bondage. But the one thing that they all had access to was a certain period of servitude for a period of time and then compensation when that time was over. Most of these Irish and Scottish would go back to their land. But when they were in indentured servitude, they were forever known as the Black Irish, Black Scots, whatnot, along with Black Africans. This term has a really deep, dark, insidious, ignorant origin. And I'm going to get to that right now.